I'd like to call the village board meeting for the Village of Cary for Tuesday, May 17th, 2016 to order with roll call, please.
Kraus.
Here.
Cavelli.
Here.
Chapman.
Here.
Kozler.
Here.
Dudek.
Here.
McAlpine.
Here.
Thank you. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. There's more seats up front. This is just like church. You guys can sit up here. You've got 4 or 5 seats, 6, 7, 8 seats, so have a seat, make yourself at home. Thank you. We'll now move to the open forum where the public is invited to make an issue-oriented comment on any matter of public concern not otherwise on the agenda. I had one individual sign in, Jim Rivitsa. Jim, we'll call you when that comes up, okay? Is there anybody else that would like to address the village board? Okay, we'll go ahead and close open forum. It is my pleasure to have the honor of swearing in our next sergeant for our police department, Mr. Chad Fetzer. If you could join me up front here with our chief. We'll let the chief give a little bit of a background on Chad here.
Just a little bit of information about Officer Fetzer. First, he was sworn as a police officer on April 2nd, 2003. Let me see if I get these. Is that about right?
Yeah, about right.
Okay. He completed his training at the Illinois State Police Academy June 12, 2003.
Yeah, somewhere.
Okay. He served in the capacity of detective, school resource officer, officer in charge, field training officer, and he was president of the Turnover Police Lodge 231. I miss anything?
I don't think so.
Okay. Some of the training that he's attended basic and advanced evidence technician training. He's a 40-hour homicide investigation and death investigation seminar attendee. He's completed basic traffic crash investigations. He's a breath alcohol testing operator. He has attended the 40-hour juvenile specialist training, and he's a juvenile officer. And he just recently attended the supervision of police personnel at the Northwestern University Center for Public Safety. I'm sorry. In preparing for this, I went through Officer Fetzer, soon to be Sergeant Fetzer's personnel file, and some of the operative phrases in the past that have described him are: he has a high level proficiency, he has good workplace relationships, he's direct and honest, he's well respected by his peers, and he has a good attitude. And those qualities will serve him well in this very important step of moving from line personnel to first line supervisor. Additionally, Officer Fetzer comes from a law enforcement family. His father is a retired sergeant from the Carpentersville Police Department, and his uncle was formerly the chief of the Cary Police Department. So I'm going to turn over the mic to the mayor, but then we're going to make sure we recognize people that came here.
Thank you, Chief. Did you want to invite your family up here for the swearing in?
Yeah, I have my wife and kids come up.
Anybody else? Mom or dad?
I don't think they don't want to come up here. I came up here once 13 years ago. I didn't know that far.
We have to talk into the mic because of the videotape.
Got it.
Ceremony begin. I, Chad Fetzer,
I, Chad Fetzer,
raise your right hand. Having been appointed to the office of police sergeant in the village of Cary,
having been appointed to the position of police sergeant in the village of Cary,
in the county of McHenry aforesaid,
in the county of McHenry, aforesaid,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the state of Illinois,
the Constitution of the state of Illinois,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
and I will faithfully discharge the duties
of the office of police sergeant according to the best of my ability.
of the office of police sergeant according to the best of my ability.
Congratulations.
That's Mike. Stripes and everything. Ow.
Did you want to recognize some of the people that came here?
I just think, don't need this. Obviously, my parents for coming, my mother-in-law, my sister-in-law, and then everybody from the police department. I appreciate you guys coming out here.
All right.
That's fine.
Thanks, Tim.
And Deputy Chief Nadenoff has organized the reception up in the interview room upstairs for cake and coffee. So anyone that would like to go up there and share some refreshments, feel free to do so.
We'll take a 5-minute break here so the party of goers can head upstairs.
Bring down leftovers.
No, I know. Well, but that is the police department.
Okay, we'll go ahead and resume.
Wait. You said 5 minutes. That's not 5 minutes.
It's okay, clear it out quicker. There counts. There's cake.
I know.
There's cake.
It's cake.
Did I say that out loud?
Yes. It's okay.
Wish I would have known that sooner. Okay. Pardon me? Okay. I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda items number 1 through 11, number 11 being amended as you have in front of you due to a Scribner's error.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Kraus,
Yes.
McAlpine,
Yes.
Dudak,
Yes.
Cavelli,
Yes.
Cosler,
Yes.
Chapman.
Yes.
Okay. For the sake of the time and some other petitioners that we have, I'm going to move items under for separate action number 2 and 3 up ahead of number 1. I will entertain a motion to approve Resolution R16-0589, authorizing the village administrator to execute a 3-year agreement with CDWG for the purchase of Microsoft Office 365 E3 platform for local governments in the amount not to exceed $46,064.25.
So moved. Second.
Hey, Jake.
Mayor, good evening. Village Board, good evening. This was an item that we had budgeted for this fiscal year. We are looking to improve both our disaster recovery and our workflow efficiencies. What this would get us is Microsoft Exchange Online, Microsoft Office products, SharePoint Online, Skype for Business, and OneDrive. We feel that this is an opportunity here for the village to move into the future and into the cloud for IT services. I'd be happy to answer any questions that the village board has at this time.
Will our systems be on the Windows 10 platform?
It would be on the newest Windows product. Well, it'd be on the newest Office product. I don't know if we'd be on the Windows 10 platform.
Just wondered.
specifically.
Okay.
Trustee Dudek, does this answer your question at the last meeting about iCloud cloud storage?
Yeah, yeah, for the most part, yes.
Any other questions? Roll call, please.
McAlpine?
Yes.
Cavelli?
Yes.
Kraus?
Yes.
Dudek? Chapman?
Yes?
Counselor?
Yes.
Thank you. I will entertain a motion to approve Resolution R16-05-10, the 2016 Community Event Grants Awards as follows. The Cary Grove Area Chamber of Commerce, $10,000 for the Main Street Fest. Cary Grove J.C.'s, $5,000 for Family Days. Cary Grove Soccer Association, $2,000 for the 2016 Cary Soccer Memorial Tournament. Heroes Like Haley, $2,000, Heroes Like Haley 5K. Saints Peter and Paul School, $3,000 for the Oktoberfest. The Rotary Club of Cary Grove, $4,000 for the Cary Summer Farmers Market. And Trojan Track and Cross Country Association, $4,000 for the Father's Day 10K race.
So moved?
Second.
Chuck,
Thank you, Mayor, members of the Village Board. As the board is aware, at the last, I believe, Committee of the Whole meeting, we had some discussion about the allocation budget for these community grants. It's a first-year program for the village we're very proud of. The board, through its budgeting process in March, determined to set aside $30,000 of what can be determined to be gaming revenues that we've received. We receive about $63,000 a year in estimated gaming revenues through a policy decision of a prior village board. These events are applicants for this grant fund. We had roughly $85,000 worth of asks for grants for $30,000 budget. We were able to take what was predominantly the board's direction at the last meeting and attempt to fund a number of them. There was one event that had applied that pulled out during the process, and a second event that was applied for by the same agency, but for two events. So we were able to fund one of their events through this recommendation. So we, at the last decision, we talked about the Chamber of Commerce event, but we felt collectively, and you directed staff to take a look at methodology and then a fairness test, on how to spread the limited dollars that we had. And I think that this really does a good job of indicating to these groups that we support their events. Some of them are new, some of them are newer, some of them are changing hands of leadership. And so I believe it substantially accomplishes what you set out to do. I know that every year as we have this, we'll refine the process. And we'll also probably get out a bit sooner in the year for the application window. We did this during our budget, which was appropriate this year. I think with the level of interest, we'll try to get the applications out, January next year, give everyone a bit more time to submit their applications. I would say everyone was well thought through that was submitted. A lot of work was done by these groups to submit for these dollars, and we're happy to answer any questions at staff level for you.
any questions?
I don't have, it's not a question as much as a comment. I mean, right now, if somebody came to look for some dollars, we haven't any. And none of these events are taking place in the wintertime, so we have no holiday festivity. And, you know, at some point in time, you would think maybe a neighborhood group or a chamber or something might want to have something during the holidays and look for money. So I think at next year's budget session, we have to do a better job, you know, recognizing that this is not a sufficient amount of money and that we have to have some way to be able to accommodate those one-offs, which will happen. I mean, there's no doubt you're going to have a couple more requests this year, and there's no way we can accommodate them.
That's a good point. I mean, this is the first year out of the box here, so we're learning from this, and we've found through the various agencies or associations that there's a tremendous ask out there. I mean, we had $85,000 worth of grant asks for a $30,000 budget, and they're all decent events, and they're all things that will bring people into the Village of Cary that will highlight what the Village of Cary has to offer. So I compliment staff on honing these figures down to what we think is an appropriate amount of money. So thank you for doing that. No other questions? Roll call, please.
Chapman?
Yes.
McAlpine?
Yes.
Cosler?
Yes.
Cavelli?
Yes.
Duda?
Yes.
Kraus?
No.
No.
All right, thank you. Now moving back up to item number 1, I will entertain a motion to approve ordinance 016-05-10, granting an amendment to an existing conditional use for mining and material extraction granted under ordinance 008-0210 for Meyer Material Company LLC.
So moved.
Second.
Chris?
Thank you, Mayor, members of the Village Board. As the Village Board is aware, a petition was received from Meyer Material earlier this year and has been working its way through the public process at the Village of Cary. It has been at the Board of Zoning, Planning, and Appeals, where by a vote of 1-4, a denied motion was provided by the Zoning Board. We've, at the Village Board level, taken our time to listen to residents interested in this issue. In March, a meeting was hosted at the Cary Grove Holiday Inn to provide a forum where we had good audio, plenty of room, and the desire to listen to folks in the community that are interested in this project and have been, many of them have been following this since 2008. So that process has continued through April and now into May. The board has taken a lot of time to think through different options, pros and cons. The situation that it has with the current agreement that was written in 2008 that quite frankly has some holes in it. And then separately, how to move forward with a mining arrangement that didn't get completed. And it just didn't. Whether it be the recession, whether it be business demand that wasn't there, they didn't hit their marks. And so Meyer's come to the village and asked for an extension. And this village board, which is not a party to the 2008 agreement, has been asked to work through the issues. So as part of that, it's been important to think through, if there is an extension, what might it look like? What are the community's goals at a high level? This is not a simple financial decision. This is a very important decision from the standpoint of impact to adjacent neighbors, issues relating to the community at large, commitments made by a prior board. So a lot of time and thought has gone into this. So this board tonight will again carefully deliberate about its options. There's been a discussion with Meyer Material over time, but culminated last week on Thursday. As many of you in the audience may be aware, there were some deferred items on the agenda from time to time as the village completed its homework, Meyer completed its, and there was discussion last Thursday that culminated in this being put on the agenda. It'll be up to the board tonight to decide if it should be voted on tonight or not. But from the standpoint of the current proposal that is on the table tonight for consideration, there's been a lot of thought in listening to impacted residents along the way to see if there is an extension, how might it look, and how might it address some of the important issues of the residents and of the village. Right now, the agreement is designed to have mining completed June 1 of 2016. That's the existing agreement. With restoration, that would be completed by June 1 of 2018. So June 1 of 2018, with the agreement from 2008, was when Meyer was supposed to leave town. And what's in front of you now is a proposal that would consider an extension of the mining work that would end the mining June 1 of 2019, which would be a year longer than the back end of this agreement. It also considers, as presented in this packet and up for discussion tonight, restoration work that would continue during the course of 2019. Before I move on to the other economic terms of the agreement, I think it's important to talk about the term of the agreement because it's really important to understand and debate and discuss. Clearly, there are, the estimates are driven by corporate, analysis, but, in ballpark terms, they believe that there's still about 2.5 million tons of gravel underneath that site that they'd like to take out. That isn't out today. Right or wrong, that's essentially what they're looking at. And they see value in that. They acknowledge that they missed the mark on the time frame, but they see economic value in that material. And, so that's part of the issue. Separately, in my analysis of the agreement the village has, I'm concerned about the site as it's designed to be left as conceived in the original agreement. There's not a lot of specificity as we dug into what's it supposed to look like when they're done mining and they're done reclaiming the property, setting it up. There's lots on 31 that are designed to be flattened so that they're developable, et cetera. There's some clarity there, but there's a lot of lack of clarity about a large part of the site. And that's been concerning to staff as we've helped the board work through this process. So as part of some of the other terms of the agreement, there is $2.1 million in impact fees as presented tonight for the extension. And that would be determined for reuse and purpose by the Village Board of Trustees. My recommendation as village treasurer would most likely be if there is an extension, there is financial return. That would be most likely for one-time village projects, not operating funds. It would be for land acquisition, building construction, those kind of one-time projects. This wouldn't be offsetting property tax dollars directly for operations. This would be one-time money for one-time use recommendation. But it's $2.1 million over the term of the 3-year extension, paid out $900,000 in June of 2016, $900,000 in June of 17, and $300,000 in June of 18. There's been a lot of discussion and door-to-door visits by elected officials with residents in the Fox Trails neighborhood. A lot of interested residents from Fox Trails have testified at the zoning board, the village board, et cetera, and rightfully so. As part of that process, there's been a collection of some of the, the core, let me say, nuisance issues, rightfully so, that some of the neighbors have, that they've asked during this process the village to address, and we appreciate and respect that. There's a list of tasks, not all of which equate to economic cost, somehow, maintenance items that, we're going to take care of that we learned about through this process. But there has been a dedication in the current village municipal budget of $100,000 for Fox Trails improvements to address most likely some of the sidewalk type issues that have been raised. There's a missing sidewalk connection, other maintenance issues. As part of that, Meyer has pledged a $50,000 amount that would be, if this is approved, written as check to the village, to be held for some discussion down the road with Fox Trails neighbors as to how to expend it, whether that be more of a garden type use, a sign painting, those sorts of things. That's part of this proposal. There is a fine structure that's been modified in the new document. Rightfully so, there's a lot of concern. If they missed the deadline on June 1 of 2016, how do we know they're not going to miss another one? That's been brought up very clearly, been addressed directly by representatives of Meyer, and it is an issue of the staff, the village board, and the residents in the audience and beyond. As part of the proposal for June 1 of 2019, when mining would end, there's a lump sum approach of a $500,000 penalty if not completed, and $100,000 a month penalties beyond it for the restoration would also be put into the agreement. There is, and there has been discussion in the original 2008 agreement, there was a generic term about a bike path being added. We'll call it a multi-use path that was designed, as we saw it in the documents from 2008, to be essentially a connection from the neighborhood to Hoffman Park in the future, and or this lake park if it is developed as a lake park. Not a lot of clarity about what the terms and specifications were of that. That has been handled as a housekeeping item with the Cary Park District in the last number of weeks, and a cash payment in lieu of some bike path specification has been added to this agreement. It's a $350,000, essentially a donation to the Cary Park District for this multi-use path. I've had extended conversation with the Park District Executive Director. There's a need for the path. There's also some other planning the Cary Park District has done that may go beyond this if this is approved and this project moves forward. There's a connection to the Cambria subdivision that might be a part of this, other higher level, bigger picture bike path connections for this. So $50,000 payment is in this agreement in July of 16 for that path, and then a $300,000 payment in June of 2018. So finally, there's a number of important points to make from the standpoint of the site, as I mentioned at the beginning, and how it's graded. There are exhibits in the packet that have been created over time with consulting engineers of the village of late to specify how the village now, if this agreement is passed, how we would expect the land to be left. There are specific grades and elevations now that we have in this document that didn't exist before about how that dirt is supposed to be left, because it isn't right today, I'll tell you. And whether there be a park or not, it needs to be fixed. And so from the standpoint of what's in the document, we believe it fixes it. It's very clear. We've gone over it with Myers' team, their engineers, their staff. It's essentially a target that didn't exist before that would preserve the right of a future village board, if it's so decided, likely working with other taxing bodies, to use that as a park facility. It doesn't box anybody into doing that. We're going to show you in a minute a park plan and what that could look like, but there's no obligation of this board or future boards to build a park. We were asked during this process to cost out what it might require if one was built, what would be the budget ballpark, what would be some of the amenities on more of a passive use park, and so we did that, and we'll show you some of those exhibits. But regardless of whether a park proceeds or not, in this agreement, there are targets for that land that, from a future development standpoint, should help the village, should help the neighborhood. But obviously, that's in the eye of the beholder. So I'm going to turn it over to Brian Simmons, the Director of Community Development. He's going to walk through with representatives of the Hitchcock Design Group, who is hired with land conservancy funds that we hold to do some park design, which is an important part of this in terms of understanding that site and its future. So I'm going to turn it over to Brian and a representative of Hitchcock Group.
Thank you, Chris. Real briefly, just to go over the site as far as location of the property, the area that we would be talking about is on this exhibit is marked out with the red line around the property. Would comprise the entire portion of the lake that would be dedicated to the Village of Cary as the owner of the property. So when we worked with Hitchcock Design was to come up with concepts for how the lake could be continued to be developed for park use in the future, and what those elements may potentially be for the property going forward. This exhibit was the schematic design that we came up with, or that we worked with the consultant on, incorporates various recreational elements throughout the site, looks at various locations for pathways and the different types of improvements that can be installed in the property in the future for recreational purposes. Basically looking preserving areas that could be utilized potentially for a, swimming area, different recreational areas, different contours up as you enter the site off of 31. So you'd have multiple layers or levels of recreational use as you would enter the site to get down to the water level. Likewise, with the plan, it will preserve walking paths around the lake so that residents or individuals that are visiting the lake can traverse around the entire property and would have access to the entire parcel.
I'd like to touch on that subject for the benefit of the board and the public. The surrounding path has been discussed and analyzed during this discussion process with Meyer. Initially, there was the thought to have an asphalt path. As we've collaborated with the Cary Park District and others, at this time, the path requirement, our thought is to have it be compacted CA6 gravel, which is the set base for a bike path in the future to be then overlaid with asphalt if that's the decision of the agency that oversees it. In 2019, that path, if it's built, will be usable for mountain biking, walking, running, etc. But we don't expect in 2019 to have a park that's built out like the prior plan showed. And so it's our recommendation not to ask to have the asphalting done now and to have that delayed down to a future time because it would only degrade if it's built now with low use. And we believe there's better economic value if this proposal is moved forward to have a well-built CA6 base there. So I just wanted to touch on that piece.
Sure. And this exhibit basically shows what Meyer material would be required to perform on the site as far as improvements when the property would be turned over to the village. It shows the location of the lake and the proposed path location around the property. They also are required, per the original agreement, to install a access drive and parking area off of Clausen Road that would enter in the southeast corner of the site so that there would be vehicular access to the property so individuals could access it there via car and then park and access the rest of the recreational use via the walking path. So this plan shows what the improvements would be, and then as the village in the future were to go forward with developing additional recreational uses out there, the plan that's in place at this point would show ways that improvement can be performed, but those would be future decisions before this board or future village boards for construction and financing of that.
And I might touch on that subject. Some of the feedback from residents has come up over the years. I've been here since 2011. We hear stories of what was said in 2008 and what people believe, and people buy homes, sell homes, new people come in and are told things. There certainly was a mindset of at least some residents that there was some sort of water view at the back end of this. And as we've debated and realized that the specificity about the lake shape and its size and things have been looked at through this process and realized that there wasn't a lot of direction to the contractor Meyer, we've tried to preserve water where we believe the village had previously committed it would be. So that's embedded in this plan and is modified as shown.
These exhibits basically show the contours of the property through various cross sections through the site that would show how the grading would be left to generally create that gentle slope at the northwest corner of the site as you enter in off 31. So they'd have different tiers of areas for recreational uses. As you can see in this exhibit, in this portion here, would have different shelves that could be utilized for different recreational purposes. Likewise, the cross sections across the lake, there are requirements as far as what the slopes would be that would access down to the lake level, and then where the bike path can be constructed. This is a revision of an exhibit that's in the original approvals for the side slopes, where the village established a maximum 3-to-1 slope leading down to the bike path area with other slopes around the bike path, walking path, as you get down to the water level.
This is the document I referenced earlier that we created that provides the target for what would be expected.
And it's very similar to, again, an exhibit that was in the previous approvals, the exhibits that were in there, it revises it based off the new width for the path to get the 15-foot width, calls out the materials that would be installed at that location as well. If you have any additional questions or.
Very good. The thought would be to take public comment before we bring it back to the board floor for discussion and, further debate and feedback.
I've got one person that's officially signed in. Jim, did you want to come up and address the village board now, please?
You're going to come up after the public comment.
Jim Remza, 9 Tamarack Court. I've spoken here in front of the board a number of times, Mr. Mayor, members of the board, and you understand that I'm not in favor of the extension. A couple of comments I'd like to continue with. As first of all, as you lay up the initial site plan, it was an inaccurate site plan. The one that's up there right now is more accurate to what exists right now, and who knows what it's going to exist. So as I've mentioned before, kind of like pie in the sky, looking at something that could be. My concern too, as you mentioned about the bike path being delayed because you don't want to have them do that because you're not sure what the end product is. Best I can figure, you've actually delayed any use of that property by at least another year since you give them to 2019, and they won't have a bike path, whereas there should have been a bike path by 2018. So just keep that in mind, that you've actually delayed the use of this property that everybody's been talking about and looking forward to for years. Mystery to me. As I reviewed some of the materials today, first time I was able to get my hands on some of the materials, I took a look at, because there had been some discussion that back in January, Meyer sent out a letter to certain individuals expressing their desire to extend their commitment to 2019. As I looked at I never got a letter, and as I started looking through it, in the original homeowners valuation program, there were 130 residents identified within the immediate area of the mine that would immediately be impacted, as was understood by the board back at that time. As I looked at the addresses of where those letters went to, I couldn't find any more than about 30 of the residents that got letters on that address. And I point that out just because I've spoken about the commitment of Meyer Material and their desire to mine regardless of what the residents have voiced in their opinion, and they weren't in favor of it in the beginning. And again, it looks like you're kind of disregarding all of those comments made to the zoning board, and that's why they ruled against the extension, and now I guess you're disregarding that. I'm not sure why you have a zoning board if you're just not going to listen to it. Makes no sense. In the monetary proposal that I see today, I don't see anything in there that addresses those highly impacted 130 residents of the Fox Trails. I see nothing in there. At least the board back in 2008 said, hey, if you don't meet the commitment, there's going to be a $100,000 penalty every month. While you talked about a fine in this plan, I don't see where the fine kicks in until after they don't meet the next 3 years commitment. No fine immediately. I don't understand that. I don't know why you're waiving the $100,000 that Meyer already agreed to every month to continue to mine. Those are my comments. I'd like to thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anybody else that's here that would like to address the village board on this property? Please come up to the microphone, please. If you could please state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Don Beer. I was one of the, well, I am one of the original 130 residents that were impacted by this. And over that period of time, I probably spent, $12,000, $15,000 on a housekeeper to keep my house clean, just to keep the dust off and so forth, because it has been quite an imposition on their part as far as the problems that we've had with it. I was curious, we're netting in the 3 years $2.1 million, as I understand it, over a 3-year period. And if we were taking fines, we would be getting $3.6 million. So there is $1.5 million that Meyer is not going to have to come through with if the agreement goes through. So this must have been part of the compromise, as I see it, as I hear you.
I'm glad to address that at the end, but I want to hear all your comments. I'm glad.
Okay, that's fine. The issue of restoring the land, this was initially back in 2008, they said they would restore it to a better condition than it was initially, and that would be put in a position where we could use the land. That's, I think those were the general terms used. At least that was what presented itself to us. Does this mean when the land is restored that the berms go away so that if there is a lake there, people can actually see that it's there? And the weeds along Classen will be gone so we don't have just an eyesore all the way along those roads? It would be nice if you have to have the lake there to at least make it approachable and something that you could enjoy seeing. I don't think I really want to see it. I'd like to have never had it started, but since it's there, it would be nice if it were something that we could appreciate at least. So that's my main issue. My issue was $1.5 million. I'd like to see us get that money. And they promised us if they want to keep landing, live up to the original agreement.
Okay.
Thank you for those comments, sir. I'll touch on that one piece of the economics because it's important and you asked it. 2 answers. One, difficult for us to quantify. There is significant economic value in what we don't have in the current deal, which is specifications for how they have to leave the land in the grades that we set, the target that I mentioned. It's not in the original deal. You understand Meyer is a contractor. They have equipment. They have labor. They're mobilized there to do the mining. And so while it's somewhat unquantified specifically, there's significant value in my eyes in having it graded properly, which we don't have today in a commitment for. So that explains some of the difference. The other piece is that, and I don't agree to it at this point because it really hasn't come up, but there certainly is some debate about what the original agreement said for when the penalties would need to be applied. I don't agree with the position at this time, but it's been said that the penalties apply only when the months are that they're mining and not the months when they're not. And that would have to be debated at length, you understand it? And so that's a part of the other piece that's there. And we did respect the concerns of the $100,000 penalty in terms of the impact fees that we are asking for. But those are 2 answers to, some of what you said, but I appreciate your comments. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's actually about 2.5 million because we got to factor in the monies that they're donating to the park district.
I apologize. You're right.
Thanks.
Thank you.
There's another speaker.
Yes, sir.
My name is Jim Thomas. I live at 648 Knollwood Drive. That's right where the township divides Algonquin School District, Cary, on the pit. My concern is about the economic windfall or lack thereof with the imposing fines and things like that. And I'm all for improving the village, don't get me wrong. But the village hasn't endured what we've had to endure. And it was a nice little crumb. They sent $7,500 our way to try to improve our home in a certain manner that would be energy or windows or something like that, which was great. I can't deny that. I got something out of the deal. But the fact that it goes on, and we've already been through the housing thing. It wasn't kind of the generation that built in Fox Trails. My house is worth just slightly more than I paid for it in 1989. And I know that you can't address that. But Meyer Material wants 2 in excess of 2 million tons of aggregate out of this. I think a ton is 2,000 pounds. I don't know what they sell this stuff for, but it seems to me that that's a lot of money. And I'm not trying to take anybody to the cleaners by all means, but I think that during this storm, I'm 61, I might be able to sell my house when I'm 71, or, you know, right now it's a depressed market and there's a construction behind it going on, and there's no promise of I mean, they're trying to, and I thank you for trying to nail them down on a decent end result, but it's kind of concerning that you talk about the village will gain on the backs of our, I mean, really my property is, I can't sell it without taking a loss. And I have to endure the cleaning, the twice a year pressure washing. And who's going to be doing that for me? You know, the kids moved out. It's me and the wife. I can't get out. It's a 2,700 square foot home. I really don't need maybe half that. And I'm kind of stuck there. So previously discussed at the other meeting was some sort of a pool, whereas if some people were lucky enough to get out, sell, there would be some sort of a pool in effect where maybe a portion of the losses could be recouped somehow, I don't know, out of this pool, because it could grow as time goes on. But I think the $2.1 million in fines is very lacking to me, and it goes for the betterment of the whole village, which, don't get me wrong, I do good deeds all the time. I don't have a problem with helping the village out, but we're looking for a little help too. That's all I got to say.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Is there anybody else that would like to address the village board?
Mayor, if I may.
Sure.
I don't think I'm as thought out as the speakers before, but I'm going to give it a shot. My name's Al Brzezkowski. I live at 525 Abbeywood Drive in Cary. The question I have before the board, and Mr. Mayor, thank you for allowing me to speak, is I've looked around the room and I see a lot of my neighbors here, and we've all had to endure the noise, the dust, and a few other things. And let's face it, I mean, we're all in this together. The impact fees that have helped the village out have helped all of us out. But it seems like a few of us are enduring some of the pain as a result of it. I can tell you the people that are on the northeast part of town don't even know that there's a gravel pit on the southwest part of town, okay? So this has been going on for 10 years now. They're asking for an extension. In 3 years, there's going to be a different board. I don't know if there's going to be another extension to what this gentleman said over here. I'm 60 years old. I was expecting in 2 years to at least have some sort of end to what's going on. The fact that the land would be reclamated. Mr. Clark, correct me if I'm wrong, even if the land is reclamated, that's no guarantee that a park is going to be on there. It just means the fact that the land will be usable for a bike path or walk path or whatever. Is that correct?
The bike path will be there, as I said, and yes, you're correct that the park project would need our collective efforts for funding, grants, interagency cooperation with the Cary Park District, others, working with the Village of Algonquin. I mean, we would need to put a funding plan together to make it happen.
When we looked at the drawings that were up on the board, was there any indication of what the cost of something like that would be to put a park in?
Sure. We had a ballpark budget done on that colored map that was in the slides. It's $8 to $8.5 million.
Okay.
I want to be clear that through the original agreement, the village has saved about $1.7 million in what's called the Land Conservancy account. Obviously, the board, if there's an agreement, would have to decide what to do with the $2.1 million heading the village's way. There's competing interest in that. But I believe that we've got seed money that we can use as starters for grant applications. I mean, it's important to have local share. We've got that. I mean, we can get aggressive. Obviously, we all know what's going on in the state of Illinois right now. But, you know, from state and federal help, I think that we can go at this. And but there is no, you're correct, there is no absolute park commitment on the back end. What I'm trying to do, if there is an extension, is make sure it's set up right, and so there isn't millions spending to move dirt around, you know, that should be done now. If because if there is a desire to have a park, it's going to be extraordinarily expensive if they don't leave it right. So that's my answer.
Thank you very much. I guess in closing, all I'd like to say is the fact that I understand what the business of what they're trying to do, and let's face it, was it 2 million tons or whatever, I think is what the exact amount was. I would be curious again to see what the value or the profit that they're going to get out of that versus what we're getting out of that. For one, I mean, I've seen a company in Meyer Material that was bought by, I believe their parent company's Aggregate. That company's been in business over 150 years, and for them not to be able to get a good idea of what the ground is, they had to do some testing before they started digging to be able to see what's underneath. So when they come back and they say that there's some issues with the fact that they never saw that were under the ground when they started digging, it to me is a smoke screen because they knew. Okay, I mean, we all suffered through 2008 through 2010 of recession. Everybody did in this room. I mean, unless you were really smart and invested in, like, I won't even go there. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, it's just, I'm just asking for your guys' help because I think all of us here have endured 10 years of this, and we don't want to endure anymore. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you. Is there anybody else here who would like to address the village board? Yes, sir.
Tim Dennehy, Bayberry. I've been before a couple groups before. I start off with, I am against it. Here you have a company whose business is knowing what the land is, what the mine, what the timetables. They came up with an estimate. They failed. We didn't know what the land was. In your own notes, they've owned it since 2001. So they had 8 years to survey this land. They failed. Now they come back with a new survey, 3 years. Why is this one going to be correct? Exactly like other people have said, they'll be back again in 3 years and we'll be doing this all over again. Just let the noise, let the dust quit. Because what do you guys, you're going to tell, what do you tell my kids? You get the dust, you get the noise, the city gets all the money. What's the deal there? There's no deal for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have a comment? Sure.
Bruce Janu, 630 Knollwood Drive. There's over the last couple of days when I've been talking to people, a lot of people said that they weren't going to come because there's 15 days really between now and when the deadline is. So they're like, Bruce, it's a done deal. It's already written and it's done, so why bother? I think there's a lot of people who are just really kind of tired of this whole process, and based on what has happened in the past, don't feel like things are going to go in the way that they wish it to. They kind of see the writing on the wall. As I've said before, I think Meyer should be held to the original agreement, pay the fines if they want to mine. On the Cary connection site, it was stated that Meyer needs about 6 to 8 months in order to fill the orders that they have now. And in this new agreement, they're going to be mining and reclaiming the land at the same time. And since we're going to get a lake regardless, no guarantee of a park if you say no, and if you say yes. So what's really the difference? Why not just say no, and if they want to mine, collect the $100,000 for the 6 to 8 months, and they can reclaim the land at the same time, since that's what they're going to do anyway, and then they can the lake on. Thank you.
Thank you. There's some other hands. Sure, come on up.
My name is Ann Haslinger, and I live on Bayberry Drive. And my question really comes down to accountability. After all these years, I guess a board have changed and everything else, but, why haven't we held Meyer accountable, number one? Number two is, where have your discussions gone with the village of Algonquin?
Sure, I'd be happy to answer both of those for you, or try to. As far as accountability, what I can answer is, when I got here in November 2011, 3 weeks later, we had a zoning board meeting at the Holiday Inn. And they had approached the village post most of the recession and said, it's 2011, look, we are going to be a number of years off. We missed the mark. There's no market to sell it, and we're asking for a multi-year extension. There was a business case that they tried to make to the zoning board at the time, subsequently the village board, and it failed. The board at the time said, no, we're not doing that. You can come back, which they do every July. It's part of the agreement and give an annual report on how they're doing. But no board since 2011 was interested in addressing the issue on the extension or not until we got to the end. We didn't do any planning of that park until the last 3 to 4 months because of that. We didn't know at our staff level whether there would be an extension because prior boards had not answered the question and said that, no, here's the agreement, we're going to stick to it. That's not different than what this board is dealing with, but it's also, this board has looked at how that agreement is written and what exposure the village has if there isn't completed work and those sorts of issues. So that's my answer to the first part. So from an accountability standpoint, again, it's almost June 1 of 2016 and they're not done. And here we are. From the standpoint of Algonquin, I've had preliminary conversations with them. I'm not going to go deeper. We have a resolution that was passed by the village board. I have direction to speak to them about what we talked about is to having that land on the south end become part of the village of Cary. About the bottom half of that site is in Algonquin now. They seem interested in dialogue with us about having it become part of Cary. There's good intergovernmental cooperation and support there. They have their own community interests at heart, of course, but it's a disparate part of their village as compared to Cary. It's kind of on the outside of Cary, too.
Yes, I know, I live there.
Yes, and they view it that way as well. So from this, it's not an extraordinarily difficult process to talk about a DNC. But they seem willing and interested. There's a piece of property, and part of the agreement is to redevelop or set up property right on Route 31 now, once this mining is done, so it can be sold and developed on the 31 corridor. There's a lot north of the unincorporated subdivision that's in Algonquin on 31. There's been some discussion with Algonquin that they might be willing to have it become part of Cary with some kind of revenue sharing agreement. And that's because we have utilities out there and they don't. And so any development up that corridor is viewed from a commercial standpoint as being positive by the village and its comprehensive plan and past boards. But it requires utilities, it requires a developer, all of that. So we've tried through this process to collaborate with the other affected agencies. The other point to make separate from Algonquin is we've tried to have some initial dialogue with other taxing bodies that might become a part of a park solution in the long run. But I appreciate that isn't a done deal now. But it's if the board decides to head down that path, it's a lot of work, but it's certainly a possibility.
And I do want to just say that the de-annexation has been brought up in the past and has not been successful. Algonquin has not wanted to do that. This goes back to when my kids, who are 30 years old now, were in grammar school, and we were trying to see what we could do about that. So I guess I don't have a lot of hope that really would occur. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to address the village board? Then we'll go ahead and close open forum. I'd like to ask the petitioner, Meyer Material, to come forward and address some of the concerns, answer some of the questions.
Or not.
Or not, yeah.
Good evening, Tom Zanik on behalf of Meyer Material.
And Randy Willie, the land manager for Meyer Material.
There was just some small items relating to Jim's first comments when he first objected to the fact that he didn't receive a letter. Just Mr. Willie asked us to send a letter out to the neighbors alerting them that we would be filing a petition. Normally when we send letters out to adjoining property owners. That's what we did. We sent letters out to adjoining property owners. The 130 homes he's talking about are east of the adjoining property owners. That's why he didn't receive one. As you know, this process started.
Okay.
Thank you. Just so you know, we sent them out to the adjoining property owners. Number two, with respect to the process, as you know, it started in 2008. We've got 8 years under our belt, not 10. Number three, we really appreciate the time and energy that both PB&Z, the citizens, and the staff and this village board have given to Meyer Materials since 2008. And we think we're in a good position now to make sure this property is in its best condition when we exit. And Mr. Willie may have some other.
Just one point of clarification. When we initially petitioned in 2008, we used the most advanced technology to drill the property. We advanced 13 holes, pretty much boilerplate industry practice. And we knew what we had been mining previous to that. It wasn't until about 3 years ago when we started running into the geologic formation that had shifted. And we advanced borings in October of 2014 after the corn was taken out, so we could at least take a better look at what was remaining for the project. And there was another additional 9 borings put in.
If you have a comment, I'll call you up in a moment, okay? Thank you.
Then with respect to the 2011 petition, we did, the message was clear that the PB&Z was uncomfortable feeling that we had until 2018, or at least right to mine until June of 2016, and that we were, frankly, the message was we were 4 or 5 years too soon to request an application at that time, just in case Meyer's evaluations of going forward what the time was that they would need. So in honoring that request, we withdrew our application before the village board considered it, knowing that, frankly, it was dead on arrival, and we needed more time to show that, in fact, the facts were as represented in 2011, but we waited until now to make the full presentation.
And just one other addition, the beginning of the project, we did install the sewer and water that will make Route 31 available for commercial purposes, and we also made contributions for the path that connects Fox Trail to that.
It's been brought to our attention that we had a trustee voice some concerns regarding the time frame that you're submitting right now to the end of December of 2019. Is that for the lack of another word, set in stone?
Mr. Willis.
The reclamation portion, in order to deliver the formation that's been created by Hitchcock Design, we'll be able to mine up until, let's say, June 1st of 2019. We could probably accelerate the reclamation of that last phase if we're able to get the conveyor belts out immediately following and leave ourselves the most narrowest strip possible. So, could we take a month or two off and maybe finish by the end of October? Yes, because I don't think after that it's going to start freezing. So, if there's any consideration for that.
If you could just hold there for a moment, I'd like to open it up to the village board for some discussion. Any questions, comments? Rick, did you have anything?
No.
Well, I'll ask some comments then. Just gonna look at my notes real quick here. Chris,
Yes.
as far as the theme I keep hearing is hold them to the original agreement, hold them to the original agreement. That's the theme I keep hearing. So by holding them to the original agreement, that would be the $100,000 a month for fines and penalties. But it's unclear whether or not that includes restoration time and mining time, because there's a difference of opinion.
Yeah.
I'll say.
Well, what I'll say is, as a practical matter, in an average year, they mine and have mined about 8 months out of the year. There's 4 months where they're not mining. Again, I'm going to say again, I don't necessarily agree with an assertion that the agreement says that the 100,000 penalty doesn't apply, I would need to test that, but they've made that argument, and the fact is they mine about 8 months. So the question is, that third of the year, is there a penalty or not? There might not be. But the restoration has always needed to follow the mining to some extent with a lag, because once the dirt movement is done to targets, or in the current case, there's no target at all, there needs to be some stabilization with landscaping, grass seed, those kind of things, to not just lay the dirt where it is, but to grow upon it so that it doesn't shift and flood and become a mess. So those are two answers to that.
So if there were to be a new agreement in place, the village would also be rewriting into the agreement some of the grading that you had talked about, which isn't previously specified in there. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, if we hold them to the original agreement, we're not getting necessarily all the grading that we
Correct.
could potentially be getting.
Absolutely correct.
Which we'd privatize that afterward, which could cost us significantly into the hundreds of thousands potentially.
Correct. The reality, and I mean, others that were here on the board at the time might speak to it. I was not here. But there was some undefined park goal, and in fact, there's a land conservancy fund that was allocated that we have $1.7 million in for its future funding to some extent. And, that amount, is, as I said earlier, basically a grant starter fee type piece, but not much beyond it. And so any exposure, if a park, any kind of passive park goal is the goal, certainly any amount of work now that can be done to build it right, that is not part of a grant, not part of village funds, not part of land conservancy funds, not part of anything else, is to the good. And that is not in the current agreement today, in my opinion. And the proposed ordinance that's in front of you does address that. And I do believe it's a substantial economic value to the village. I haven't asked for it to be defined because I don't want to negotiate against myself with Meyer. But that is what took the last 3 to 4 weeks of analysis in the background from their standpoint at corporate to decide if they could even hit those targets within the time frame. And we're pleased that Thursday we heard that they're willing to take that risk on if this moves forward. And I think there's a lot of value in that to the community. If there's any desire to have this be reused in any way that's beyond, say, and we've talked about it somewhat casually in the past, and there's nothing wrong with conservation district properties. Many of us use those, but whether it be the hollows or something else where it's basically, grass, prairie, those kind of things, and so water body, and then maybe some sort of path, that'd be it, and it might be all right, or it might not be. But what we heard is that over the last 5 years I've been here, a lot of different viewpoints from residents in that subdivision and otherwise that thought that there was some park that was going to come at the back end of this. And until this discussion by this board, there isn't one. Now there's a picture and there's a draft budget. There's building blocks to a grant process. There's collaboration with other taxing bodies. There's analysis of, hey, let's get as much work out of them now as we can so that if a future board wants to have that be that's possible. So.
And then as far as if they were to continue mining right now and the contract is not extended, how long could that potentially go on for?
It would have to, if there's not a deal, if there's not a deal, it would need to be, I would say, negotiated. And I would say that it is vague, and I am concerned about the concept of, well, we just pay when we mine, and, well, okay, when is that? How many months is that? Can you come in for 4 months and then leave for 12 months and then come back because for whatever reason in the market for that commodity, it's worth the most, from June to, September when road construction's going on? don't know that we wouldn't have to deal with that. And so I'm concerned that without some tight parameters on,
Chris.
what we're doing, that it's going to create some other unintended consequences.
So that it has a potential to drag it on even longer than the 2019 target end date?
I believe that if there wasn't a deal or an agreement, that we would have to look at those issues.
Jim, you had a question?
Yeah, we have Mr. Willie and Mr. Zank right here. Why don't we just ask them how long they intend to mine if this doesn't get extended?
I don't really think we have an answer. I think I've testified that because we have commitments to current customers during the construction season, that we would probably carry it out for several months this year, and then somebody would have to make a financial decision from there as to when we would stop.
Did you have any other questions, Trustee Capelli?
No, so what I struggle with is I live in Fox Trails as well, okay? But I'll be up front, I do not experience any dust. I do not experience any noise. And when I bought the property there almost 3 years ago, the mining portion had zero to do with my decision. It had everything to do with going to the Cary school districts. And all the people that live in my subdivision, I've talked to them, and the houses sold the cul-de-sac sold very fast, and I haven't heard any complaints either. So this is what I struggle with living over there, and I do like the idea of a park. I've got young kids, but I also empathize and sympathize if you guys have lived over there for a long time and have been dealing with this. So just so you know, these are why I'm asking these questions, because for several weeks I've struggled with this decision that I have to make tonight. So, okay, that's all I want to say.
Anything from this side? Trustee Kraus?
I'm just trying to, where are we coming up with this idea that it would extend past 2018? I mean, the agreement says 2018 restoration ends and it ends there. Are you trying to state that if they wanted to, they could mine 4 months this year, next year they could mine another 4 months, another 4 months, another 4 months down the line indefinitely? Is that what you're trying to make a case for?
I'm not making a case for anything, I'm just responding to the questions I was asked. But I'm explaining that if the mining isn't finished, how does the restoration start? And if the mining continues and there's a penalty provision, how does that work? And at what point is that cut off? And what point does restoration begin? What point is the site on 31, those sites dealt with? I mean, certainly there is some legal language in the agreement, but it's something that we're going to have to look at, and I am concerned about it.
I mean, I think the restoration would begin in June if they continue to mine and we just end up with a smaller lake. We put some parameters in there so that we want some shelving put in for a possible beach area on a smaller lake. We want the long strip taken out, and we just end up with a smaller lake, but we would still have the benefits of a lake. We would have more property in the north end of the site here. But in the end game, we accomplished what we really set out to do in the first place, was have some kind of a lake, have some kind of a park, finish it by 2018, and then be done with this whole thing, because that's where I think we really need to be.
In this picture right here, so the path would go around the land, or would the path actually become shorter just along the water?
Brian, would you respond to that? We have representatives from Hitchcock here as well. Go ahead, Brian.
This exhibit is based off the long-term plan that the village worked with Hitchcock to look at what the lake would be like when it was completed with the mining extension. So this would include land work from Meyer Material through the restoration to create the usable space on the northwest portion of the site for future land use or park use. The tours are showed here. The path that's shown in this exhibit would all be constructed, and at the time period that it would be converted over to the so there would be a path existing on the property for recreational use at the time the property is turned over to the village.
So it's designed to go around the lake,
Right.
and then you see the spur on the north end. That's essentially the Park District piece that we talked about earlier. And that would be built to a different standard because of what is in front of you.
But would the path itself would it be short, would it be cut off more toward the water, or would it still extend that far north?
If what? If,
if the extension doesn't go through and they're not able to mine all that and make that water.
I would say that it's another piece that would have to be debated and discussed that isn't clear.
Well, I think it could be a pathway that goes around the lake, and then also in that northern section would be like a prairie path.
From a standpoint of the mining operation on the site, basically, the way the existing ordinance is drafted, they're responsible for fines if they mine past the June 1st deadline, or if they don't complete restoration beyond the June 1st, 2018 deadline. So there still could be operations or mining operations that take place over the next 2 years in the site. And when they'd be mining, they'd be responsible for fines. And if they don't restore the property and turn it over to the village by 2018, there'd be additional fines at that time period for not completing the restoration in time. So there'd be mining operations potentially for, call it 4 months or 5 months or a year, whatever it turns out to be. And then if they don't turn the property over at the end of that agreement, there's a potential for additional fines to come in at that point for the restoration work not being completed.
And I think it's important to indicate there's two economic components of the ordinance in front of you. One is cash in terms of impact fees, and the other is work in terms of grading. And fines are one thing, but they don't equate to work. And if the village is self-performing work that a contractor doesn't for whatever the reason, that's our expense, and that is our cost. And I would need to look at the whole deal differently if you want to do that.
I think you're making us sound kind of weak, though. I mean, if we say we want to see this lake this way during this restoration period, I think we have some ability to state that this is the way we'd like to see it finished. You know, let's work together and come up with a project that is beneficial for both of us. You can get your mining material out in the years that you can get out, and we're left with a lake that we can utilize when we're finished.
Anything else from over here?
Well, I would say that, boy, it's not really fun to sit in our seats right now. I got to be real honest. And that is because you've entrusted all of us to represent our village residents. And when we have residents come out and they have legitimate concerns and legitimate complaints and legitimate struggles that they've dealt with, we do understand, we do empathize, we understand and we hear what you're saying. And it makes it very, very difficult to try and look at things because we certainly don't want to disappoint residents. We certainly don't want anyone walking away upset. But at the end of the day, someone's not going to be happy with the decisions we make. Yes, we have people here today that are really not in support of it. But I did reach out to very many residents that I do know that live over there personally, who are all excited about the potential of getting the lake as big as possible, getting the land to a position where at some point we are able to get I have, that do want that. In addition, I went to the Cary Business Expo at the high school, and every resident that came in, we had some mock little board set up about what it was going to look like, some of the potentials that could happen. Every single resident that came in there was very excited, and many of them did not know about it. So the gentleman that said that, hey, a lot of people who live on this side of the town aren't even aware of what's going on, absolutely correct. You know, just like sometimes someone's in any part of a neighborhood, you don't know what's going on all over the place. So I feel like one of the things that my responsibility that I'm tasked with is being financially and fiscally responsible for this village. So, you know, I have to look at these type of things. I did reach out to local realtors. I talked to over a dozen realtors. And again, every one of them felt that in the long run, again, it's been an absolute burden for you. I do feel for anyone that's been over there for that extended period of a time. I was not on the board. I'm not saying, hey, I was on the board, so, you know, I didn't, but I wasn't. I wasn't part of that when some of the decisions were made. But in us delving into this, we're finding out that the agreement was ambiguous. And that's concerning. I think as Chris mentioned here, as Administrator Clark mentioned, it's very concerning to say if Meyer did pull out, they are not obligated to get that grading to a position that at some point we could do something that is truly usable with the land. And then we have a big financial burden put on all the taxpayers. So it burdens everybody if we wanted to do that at some point. So, you know, at this point, I've read through all of the notes, all the information that I could gather. And it's not easy to have people, when I sit there and I say I'm going to support it, I know that the people in this room are not happy with that decision. But I'm doing it for the overall benefit, for the long-term benefits that come to everything. But I think we need to have some serious, it needs to be defined exactly what's going to happen. Not just for Meyer, but for you residents that know we're impacted by this. What's going to happen? You know, if we have $150,000 that can go back to Fox Trails, that's something where at least we can say, we want to improve some of the things that you're struggling with. I'm not saying that it's a perfect solution. I'm saying that I am struggling with it. It's not an easy decision. It is not something that I'm taking lightly or that I'm not hearing what you're saying. But that's kind of where I'm at right now with it. But I'm open to hear everything that everyone has to say here, and I'm trying to get some of those answers. I think Chris is trying to answer those, and we're trying to get those answered for you to say that we are listening, and we're trying to see what we can do that's beneficial long-term for the village.
Jim?
I'll go. I think there are arguments for both sides of the stance here, for extending it and for stopping the mining. They're probably pretty equally valid. I don't really think that's the real issue. The real issue here is trust. Trust in your elected officials. And there's nobody on this board that understands that more than I do. So when you come down to that stance of trust and doing the right thing, I plan on voting no to restore the trust of the people.
I'm just going to add that I find it a little offensive. What do you mean no one knows trust more than you? I think everybody here is very trustworthy.
I didn't say you weren't
Well,
trustworthy.
you're saying that nobody knows trust more than you.
I
was
am
your
on
comment?
this board because I distrusted the elected officials in this town. That's why I'm here right now. That's why I'm saying that. And I think that's a valid argument. I didn't say I distrust anybody on this board, but a lot of people on this board weren't on this board when this was
I agree.
voted in.
I don't know who was on the board in 2008. I don't know if anyone was. But that's fine. I just don't agree with that statement, but.
So I did have comments, but I wanted to listen to everybody else first. And I was on the board, and I voted to support it then, and I will vote to support it now, and I know it won't be popular. But I want to bring out a couple of things. You can agree or disagree, but they are what they are. The fact of the matter is the project started at probably the worst possible economic time that it could have. It started in 2008. I've been in financial services for 38 years. I've gone through 4 economic depressions. I wasn't around in 33, but I think everybody says that what we just experienced was the worst we've ever had as a country. And I can tell you from a banking perspective, it certainly was. I also can say that in the time that Meyer has worked with the village, they have fulfilled every financial responsibility that the original 2000 agreement had in it, and they always did it on time. Mr. Willie was at our board meetings religiously every year with his reports. We've never had any issues with the water samples, never had any issues with the payments, and in my opinion, as it relates to the payment, they were good corporate citizens. Again, I realize people in the audience may disagree, but that's the fact. Till this point, Fox Trails has received, a number of homeowners have received $1 million in the Homeowners Assistance Program. I recognize it would be great if we could give more assistance to the community, but that's already been done. So the investment of $1 million into Fox Trails, into a number of homeowners has already happened. The new agreement would provide a substantial sum for a relatively small amount, 18 months approximately, perhaps even of an extension and additional $350,000 for the Park District, which didn't happen the first time around. Those are significant sums of money. And to Trustee McAlpine's comment, those are the types of things that as village trustees we have to take into consideration. They will not be popular with the community, but those are things that we absolutely have to take into consideration. I will raise my hand as the only trustee that was involved in the original agreement that was said it was a crappy agreement. Crappy agreement from the perspective of Randy, Tom, you guys are equally responsible for this. We did not properly plan for how it was going to be turned over to the village of Cary. That's a mistake that I will raise my hand and say I was part of. I'm the only person on this board that can say that. You are the other two guys that could say that. This agreement that we're talking about now rectifies a mistake that was made in 2008. Am I happy about it? Absolutely not. I am not happy about it. I'm confident that the two of you aren't either. But the fact of the matter is, I've served on this board for 10 years, and I've tried to make decisions, and I will continue to try to make decisions that are in the best long-term perspective of everybody sitting in this room. We will not always agree, but that's the type of individual that I have always been in 10 years on this board. And I feel that for a relatively short extension, this community will get a much better product than what will happen if we do not extend it. That's one of my biggest concerns, if not my biggest concern. We will get a project turned over from Meyer Material that is not going to be useful. It's not what we set out 8 years ago to produce, and I'm very concerned about the way it's left. This agreement also has part of it, it's resurrected intergovernmental discussions with the village of Algonquin for revenue sharing on parcels that 8 years ago we never talked about. We did not have 8 years ago an ongoing maintenance fund to be able to keep this property, whether it's a small lake or a large lake, it's immaterial. Presently, we have no ongoing revenue source to be able to maintain it. Yes, we have a $1.7 million land conservancy fund, but guess what? That ain't going to last forever. There is no ongoing maintenance agreement. I don't know if the public's aware of the fact that in the intergovernmental agreement that Chris Clark was talking about, the sales tax that may come somewhere down the road from the parcel in Algonquin, those funds are earmarked to come only to the maintenance of this lake. That's a really important piece that we did not have 8 years ago.
That is what will be discussed with Algonquin that they raised to us as a concept.
And, you know, the last thing that I would say, and again, I know that individuals here will refute it. I've been the recipient of some bad real estate deals myself, so I can appreciate it. But in March of this year, there's testimony. It's sitting on the dais with every one of my fellow board members, where Meyer Material had Tracy Cross commissioned to perform a study about the resale value in the houses and short sales in Fox Trails. Tracy Cross is a recognized name for all the time I've been in banking. They are the premier local real estate consultant. And their findings, and I'll read it for you. You know, I know you're not going to agree with it, but I'll read it for you. It says that they've determined that there was no discernible difference in the impression of the experts and in the conditional, I'll read it directly. Submitted a report analyzing the sales and values of the property in 3 of your subdivisions, Fox Trails, Cimarron, and Greenfields, and I believe you have a report of that. The conclusion was absolutely clear that the impression of those experts were that this conditional use permit had absolutely no adverse effect on the values of property in Fox Trails. The Tracy Cross report goes on to say he also did compare on a pro rata basis the number of homes in each of those subdivisions that were experiencing short sales or foreclosures, and actually that Fox Trail subdivision fared much better than the other 2 subdivisions that I mentioned. So, you know, we as a board can only make decisions based on factual information given to us, and the information in the Tracy Cross report does not indicate that the Meyer Material site had any economic impact on the value of the homes in Fox Trail. So I, as I did in 2000, will support this.
Dave, Jimmy, comment? Just in closing, I just want to give a couple of comments from my perspective. I look at this opportunity right now is that we have an obligation to finish it and finish it right. I don't put any harm or whatever it is on the previous board, because I wasn't on the board at that time. I wasn't there negotiating a deal on this. But we've made some substantial strides in figuring out exactly what is at stake here. From when Meyer originally petitioned the village of Cary for an extension, they wanted to go to 2020. And we kicked that around a little bit, and there was some comments by the village board that they said, would you consider 2019? Could you get it done in 2019 with the same financial backing? And back then, a few months ago, they said that they could, and I believe that the financial impact was going to be $1.8 million to the village of Cary. We kind of went back to the table too and looked at the big picture things. I know that myself and as well as other board members have talked to quite a number of people in Fox Trails. I was cornered by several residents that live on the very top of the north part of Fox Trails that said if this extension doesn't happen, we don't get the lakefront property we were promised. So we look at it from that point of view. When you look at the restoration, I've had many comments that people say, I want the berm to go away. And then the neighbor next door says, I want to keep the berm. I've incorporated it into my backyard. And if that berm goes away, I lose what I've built into that backyard. So we as elected officials have to look at things from a global perspective. We have to look at what's financially astute for all the taxpayers in the village of Cary. I look at this as, whether it's a small lake or a large lake, a tremendous asset for the village of Cary. We have been ranked nationally on top communities for young families, for schools, for parks, for just the home values and how things are going. So I look at it that way as well. When you look at the financial take that the village would get, it's pretty darn close to what the Meyer material would have to pay if they mined 7 to 8 months out of the year. That's $700,000 times the 2 years. So you're $1.4 million to $1.6 million with the impact fees. And then in addition to that, we've had trustees on this dais go door to door and talking to various neighbors and asking, what do you like? What do you see here? What are some of the things that you'd like to see happen in Fox Trails? Well, they came back with a laundry list of things, and we chipped away at almost every single one of those. We're going to get done for you, because those are some of the things that some of these impact fees will solve. The sidewalk gaps that you have in your neighborhoods, we've had a lot of concerns about the people that live on the south part of Fox Trails don't feel that their entryway sign is as adequate as the north side. So some of these things can be done. Park improvements, various improvements to the Fox Trails as a subdivision. I think that the most important part of this, and I echo Trustee Dudek's comment on this, is that we have an obligation to make sure that it's done and it's done right. There's a tremendous value of the, I know that's a little bit more of an inconvenience for some of the homeowners that live over there, but a 12-month, which is really 7 or 8 months of mining, of an inconvenience to get a park that would be a huge asset to the village of Cary, and that it's done right, and they're going to fulfill the obligation. That's something that we need to look at. The grading part of it is a huge asset. Do you know how much money the village of Cary, your money, we would have to come up with to grade that once Meyer vacates that? I think you have to look at the value of them doing the restoration the right way that wasn't looked at the original 2008 agreement. Like I said, I'm not dishing anybody. I wasn't part of that. I don't remember. I remember it going on, but I wasn't part of it at that time. So I echo Trustee Dudek's comments on these things, that it's really important that we look at the long-term views for a few months more of mining, and then getting the restoration done the right way. The financial benefits to the village of Cary, which is trails. It's all the areas in the village that will benefit from this. and then it's done. They're going to be done. They've got a huge penalty if they're not done. They have also stated just now that they've shaved off 2 months. They would commit to an October 31st of 2019 to get these things done. You know, and they've been a very good corporate partner to the Village of Cary. They have not missed a payment. They have not missed an update, and they have always tried to put their best foot forward when it comes to working with village boards. And unfortunately, I'm not able to vote on this because of the state statute that dictates that with the outcome of the zoning board. But I wholeheartedly encourage our trustees to vote in favor of this. Let's get it done and let's move on. Let's get some of these other projects that we're working on to fruition. And I think we'll have a great asset. And the residents of Fox Trails will have a wonderful opportunity. The path that was added on at your request will connect you forever down to that particular park. So. Any other questions?
Can I ask just one question?
Sure, come up to the microphone.
My name's Lenny Riddell, 783 Bayberry Drive. Who's going to patrol this park after hours? Since there's some people that ride four-wheelers and stuff behind me over here, and actual four-wheel drive cars and trucks. I call Cary Police and they go, sorry, not in our jurisdiction. So who's going to police it?
I believe when it's annexed into the Village of Cary, the bottom part will be.
That's it. That biggest word in the world. I keep even, if.
If it's in Cary, we'll
It's not in Cary.
The part that's in Algonquin is what we're talking about with them, and it's a
Just
good
past
point.
my property line, yeah.
I understand.
And that's where they
And that-
ride, and who do I call?
Well, today, or you mean in the future?
In the past, I've called Cary, they come out, they talk to me, we really can't do anything. Then they call whoever,
Sure.
But when that park trail goes in there, who's going to be responsible for that?
Our goal is to have it all be in the Village of Cary, which would make the policing simple.
Will it?
Yes.
Just one final question, if I may.
Sure.
You had mentioned earlier that the zoning board basically voted no on this.
Mm-hmm.
What were the reasonings behind voting no? Did they give that to you guys?
Is Brian?
Brian, he attended the meeting.
The zoning board looked at essentially the original agreement time period as far as what was approved. There was, remembering back as far as the discussion on it, they were concerned in general as far as granting an extension, as far as how long the time period would be. This is from a standpoint of this would be the end of the agreement or continuing it further. So their original recommendation was based off the existing agreement that was in place or approvals in place. They were not willing to grant an extension.
Was it the original completion date 2020 through the zoning board?
For the petition request, yes. It was the request.
So they've reduced it by a year?
Correct. They've amended it from that time period so that it would reduce from 2020 to 2019, this proposal.
That would be the mining piece, and the restoration is what has been discussed a bit tonight. The original zoning request was both, I believe, everything on June 1 of 2020. And tonight, the discussion is about mining done June 1 of 2019, restoration done October 31 of 2019.
I just want to, did you want to come up back up to the microphone?
I want the minutes from the zoning board meeting.
Just one final comment. I can tell you why the ZPA voted against the extension, because they listened to the residents that came and spoke in front of them about denying it. They listened to the residents. Thank you.
Thank you.
I had a question about the Chally property and the entranceway that's being proposed to go across there. Or is that your property there? What kind of negotiations went on to say that you would allow something like that?
I can answer that. The Chally property piece is a future piece. What's in the agreement with the ordinance is the two southern access points. Previously, there was one asked about on the 31 side and one on the Clausen Road side. There's agreement on the 2 on the Clausen Road side, and we would need to work with the private property owner regarding the Chally entrance off of 31. So that's not resolved at this time. That is private property.
I would just like to say that
Come to the mic.
Could you come up to the microphone, please?
I would just like to say we've been with the village since it all started. And I'm for this. The village needs this. In order to get, this is your revenue today, but that commercial property is your revenue for the future. And we need to bring this, so we can get somebody in there to develop it. If you leave it the way it is, how are you going to draw anybody in there? So that's, we've worked with the village all the way through. And we were with the village when Meyer started this, and I'm 100% for it. And, whatever it takes to get it done. It needs to be finished. It needs to be finished right. You want to make sure that lake is dug deep enough, and you want to make sure that, I'm out there every day, and there virtually is no dust. You get some dust from across the road from the concrete recycling plant. As far as the noise, I can be standing in the yard there, and you can't even hear it. And if anybody would like to come out, and I'd be more than happy to, let you on the property and take a look at what's going on. But it's all on the up and up. They're doing a good job.
Could you state your name and?
Alan Chally.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you. Any other comments? I'll get you one more attempt. Come on up here.
Just to clarify what was stated by Mr. Chally. Mr. Chally sold the property to Meyer Material. It's my understanding. And if he doesn't hear anything, the prevailing winds go from the west to the east. So he's on the western side of it. So he wouldn't get the dust issue. Like he already explained, he gets dust from across the road because the prevailing winds come from the west, southwest. Just to clarify things as far as why he doesn't hear anything, because the noise goes that way. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other comments from the village board?
I just have a question. I guess, I'm just curious after hearing everything laid out with grading and what potential it has. Has anyone's mind changed tonight about the extension? Not at all? None?
No, you don't live on that edge. It's getting ridiculous. You promise one thing, you call it.
Okay.
You can keep making extensions. I guarantee if the market is good right now, they can find it.
Could you come up to the microphone, please?
This gentleman here, if it was a hot commodity right now, they'd be mining the heck out of that thing. But because it dropped, hey, we can't predict that either, right? And you tell me there's no dust at your house, you're welcome to come to my house and do the finger test every week after the people come in and clean my house. That is a lie. That's when we say that straight out. There is so much dust on the Bayberry Drive area, don't even say that. But if the commodity was there, they'd be mining the heck out of that pit. Correct or not?
Correct.
Yeah,
you know what?
Excuse me.
I'll get into a dialogue with you about mining. I lived next to a mine for 15 years, okay?
All right, I'll allow one more question, this gentleman in the back, one more time. Could you come up to the podium, please? Sorry.
Give him a microphone.
To me, and listening to all of this, no, my mind didn't change a whole lot because I think the issue back in 2006 and beyond when they came forward was a matter of trust. I just don't trust that any of this is going to be completed as you're discussing it. How reliable are they? I think that's, the fact that the agreement wasn't sound to begin with has a lot to do with visiting with the board that wasn't experienced in doing this against a company who's been doing it for years and years and years and knew exactly what they were doing. And we had a naive board, probably, I don't know. I don't know the thinking of the people involved. But I do know that the people involved for Meyer obviously were better informed in creating such an agreement with all the loopholes in it, and now you're finding them. I'm just concerned it's too late, and we're not going to get what they're promising to give us because they didn't promise it in the beginning.
Thank you. Okay, is there any other comments from the village board?
I just want to say that, again, I hear what everyone is saying, but I do believe that what Michelle said was about, right now it is, as a board, is about the revenue that you're providing to the board now, but getting the property restored to the proper state is what's going to be the future of providing revenue to sustain the property. Because we do need to look at that, what is going to sustain that property. We don't want to have it done and then be there and be an eyesore. We want to get this to a point that the loopholes are cut. You made a very valid point. The agreement was probably very flawed. And it's incumbent upon us then to make sure that we fix that and that we make sure of where we're at moving forward. It's very difficult if it's ambiguous and we can't have anyone held accountable. I mean, do we want to litigate? We don't want to get to a point where like, hey, we don't have to pay a fine. Yeah, we do have to pay a fine. If it's not clear, we have to. It's incumbent upon us to get it defined so that we can get this done properly and move on from there.
Okay, any other closing comments?
No, thank you for your attention. Appreciate it.
Okay, roll call, please. Yeah,
The mayor mentioned this earlier, because the petition failed to get a positive recommendation from the zoning board, state law requires that at least 4 trustees vote yes. And I emphasize trustees. Does anyone have any questions about that? All right.
Mr. Simon, does that mean that an abstention is not a yes vote?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Roll call, please.
Chapman?
Yes.
Dudek?
Yes.
McAlpine?
Yes.
Kraus?
No.
Cosler?
No.
Cavelli?
No.
Okay, motion
Thank you for
fails.
your time. Appreciate it.
Okay, moving forward to administrators report, please.
I have no report at this time.
Chief?
Just one thing, we're having the Special Olympics Cap on Top at the Dunkin' Donuts on May 20th, which is Friday, from 5 a.m. to 1 p.m. And invite everyone to come out and make a donation for Special Olympics.
Thank you for doing
Thank
that,
you.
Chief.
Jacob, do you have anything?
I don't think so.
Mary? Brian? Thank you. Any future agenda items in discussion by the village board? I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?